Hi, artist Lee Suzanne Jordan here. I get asked a lot about my painting process, so here's a short demo of the process I used when painting Dreaming of the Cohuttas, which is an abstracted landscape uh, based on some views I've had of the local Cohuttas. It's kind of a ridge slash small mountain range area just about an hour north of me here in the North Atlanta area. So you can see I have a sketch from when I was at on the site, and then now I'm setting up my palette. I'm going to use a very simple palette using some yellows and reds and a few other basic colors. I like to use a limited palette because it helps me keep my colors fresh and vibrant. I don't have to worry too much about muddy colors, and it's just a lot easier that way. So you can see here I'm getting out some blue. Usually I use like a ultramarine blue is my favorite type of blue to use, but I also really like to use cerulean. But you see this is a really kind of fun blue made by Sennilier, and it comes in these little plastic containers, so it's really easy to get the most out of it, and it's really good artist quality, a highly pigmented paint. So here I'm trying to adjust things so you can see better, and oh, there we go. You see, I got a few more colors to put on the palette. All right. I've been experimenting a lot with my camera setup, so things are a little shaky. Oh, and I'm using some titanium. It's not real titanium white, it's a buff white. This is a lot of really great for mixing skies and things like greens and blues together because you're not starting from straight white. So it's a great color to use. And here we go. I've got my sketch. And I'm going to roughly use it as a guide for when I'm laying out my painting. So that's what's next is actually laying it out on the canvas. And here you see I've got a brush ready to go. Dipping in a little bit of water and getting ready to make a little wash. Starting out very roughly with a very big brush. The bigger the brush, the better when you're starting out. So just gonna start laying some stuff in, a few lines down. And these are just guides. I'm not gonna paint by numbers or anything. It just helps me kind of get started. Also warms up my wrist and helps me get ready to dive into more details. And it's fun. It's fun just to lay something down so you don't have just a white surface staring back at you. And I'm trying to be real careful here about the shape and line of the mountains. That's kind of the appealing thing is just their natural shapes. So kind of close to that. And here I'm laying down some dark areas. Trying to adjust some stuff. Yep. Those brushes out of the way. Yeah, I'm sitting down for this part. Sometimes I stand and sometimes I sit. It kind of just depends on what I feel like doing at the moment, whether I sit or stand. And a list of my um, easels. Some of them are tabletop, but I have a couple easels that you can adjust them so you can sit or stand while you're using them. Standing's really great, especially for portraiture. Um, so here we go, getting some more of those dark areas in. I'm going to keep that going. It's really important in landscapes to kind of look at where the light's going and think about that. And painting the sides. So I like to paint the sides of my paintings. Sometimes I'll paint them a very neutral color all the way around, but I found lately that I like painting the sides with paint in the paintings, even if I end up framing the piece later. I just feel like it's more complete that way. And I'm not the cleanest at it either. So a lot of times there'll be a little bit of paint on the back, but I feel like that's just makes it more unique. So I don't worry about it too much. I just laying in some more shape to the background. And I don't worry about it too much because with acrylic you can lay color on top, so it's okay. If you end up not liking something to lay down, you can always change it. Again, using a very neutral color to start with. It is a bit warm. And it's just a mixture of, I think, some yellow and a little bit of green, maybe a little bit of blue. There I'm wetting it down, mostly because it's a very hot day. I painted this in July. It was a very hot day. I think it was August. Actually, it was August. It was a very hot day, so one, I used a spray bottle to keep my palette wet if I'm outside, but also I'll use that on the painting a lot of times to get some interesting effects. Also helps keep things loose because you have less control. A little more spray, a little more blending, just kind of playing around. And this is very early stages, so here we go. We'll get ready to get a little more into it here in a minute. Okay, now I'm trying a smaller brush. It's much smaller. And with landscapes, I find I tend to be a lot more experimental with my approach. So just thinking about where I want to lay those first marks. Sometimes that's the hardest thing. So trying to lay down some deliberate lines. Really hone in on some of the different shapes I'm seeing in the sketch. You can see I'm using a darker green that I've made. I don't have a palette cam yet, so I don't have the two camera views to show you yet. So something to work on. Right here you can see I am going in and trying to find those deep shadowy areas where the little ridges on the side of the hills and mountains is, and some of the shadows it creates. I'm not sure why I picked such a small brush. Again, I experiment a lot, so sometimes it'll seem like a good idea at the time to try putting in some uh, lines or shapes with different sized brushes. But usually I go from a very big brush, biggest possible brush I have by me, to smaller and smaller brushes, and sometimes go back and forth a little bit, but I find that if I use a bigger brush than I want to, usually that helps keep things looser and more energetic. But again, I'm trying something different here with this one, so we'll see what happens. Just really trying to get the brush clean. And I'm trying to put in some a grayed down purple in the background for some of the distant mountains. So this is an area where the Cohuttas is really close to the beginning of the Appalachians. It's just to the west of where the Appalachians start, and that's over near Immaquillola Falls, which is just to the east of the Cohuttas, over near between Ellijay and Dahlonega. And Immaquillola is really a great place to visit. There's a little park, state park there. You can go and hike around a little bit. You can actually hike to the Appalachian Trail. It's only a few miles. Or you can just go there for the waterfalls. It's famous for its really big waterfall. And there's these walkways you can walk up all these wooden steps up the side of the waterfall and get a lot of really interesting views from there. And there are some little waterfalls and things in the Cohuttas, and there are some swimming holes and other things in there. So it's a really beautiful area too, where you should like to go out riding on a bicycle or an all-terrain Jeep down the gravel roads and check it out. And our dog, she loves trying to swim in the little creeks over there. We've been camping up there a lot. Lots of different types of trees and hardwoods and wildlife up there. We have bears and deer and a lot of other animals you'd expect. We have bats and rabbits, of course, squirrels, chipmunks, skunks, yeah, all kinds of animals, lots of different wildlife. Okay, here I am putting in some more dark areas with a brush. Let's see, did I switch to a bigger brush or not? I don't know. What's happening? Let's see. Oh, again, you can see it's a lot of work to lay down color with a smaller brush. So again, I'm not sure what I was thinking here. I don't usually use this small of a brush for relatively big areas, but apparently I thought it was a good idea. Okay, laying in some more darks. Yeah, there we go. I'm just trying to get that sense of where more of the shadowy areas are. So I can tell you that I've painted quite a few landscapes since this one in the past couple months, and I think I learned my lesson with this one to not use such a small brush, and instead, use a bigger brush. It's more fun. It's a lot more work to use a smaller brush for bigger areas on a painting. I am trying to get some paint together. Oh yeah, and what you're seeing right now in the background, that's part of our yard. So I've got some ivy back there and some different trees. Some of them are hardwood trees, and there's a few pine trees back there too. All right, putting in some maybe mid-tone colors. And trying to put in some of that smokier sky. It makes a little more sense to use a slightly smaller brush here. And hopefully you didn't hear my dog. She's talking in her sleep. She's laying right next to me here while I try to narrate some of this for you. Okay, so I'm trying to use this kind of smoky blue, purpley gray that I mixed up for the distant mountainy area. It's called the foothills of the Smokies because you look out and there's a lot of misty, smoky looking ridges and mountains in the distance, which is really cool. And I've been painting just like 2 or 3 views that I've sketched and taken photos of a lot lately, mostly on smaller canvases to get a real feel for the shapes and the colors. And then pretty soon here in the future, what I'll do is I'll take that and I'll paint on a much larger canvas. This one is 16 by 20, actually 20 inches wide by 16 inches high. But I want to start painting a lot larger again. So I have some 24 by 18 inch, and I think some 30 by 20s. So I'll start making some much larger paintings. But first I find it's really useful to start smaller because you can work out a lot of challenges that you run into, like what colors do I use, what combinations of colors, what shapes and forms, um, things like using too small of a brush for the scale of what you're trying to paint. All that kind of stuff you can work out a lot easier when you're working on a smaller scale. So that's what I'm doing here. And you can see just how long it took me to lay this down. And that's a lot. Okay. You can see I've painted over some of the things that originally I painted in, and that's okay. I tend to take a almost a sculptural approach to my paintings. So I'll lay some things down, but then I'll um, add and subtract from them. I'll kind of carve things in or out, layer over things, put some other things back in, back and forth. So there we go. And I'll do a little bit of the edge while I've got it. Again, trying to get that kind of smoky effect. Yep. And that's going to be most of the background. And then what we're getting ready to see here in a minute is laying down more of the color and what that looks like. So here I've laid down more of the colors. You see the greens I've put in and some of that purple mountain range stuff in the distance. And there's the original sketch. So, yeah, the sketch was more of an inspiration. I didn't go exactly by the sketch, you can see. And then, going to show you the final painting. So let's take a look. And it's also in the end credits as well. So here's the final painting. You can see I put in a lot of layers to it. Again, it's a 20 by 16 inch painting. And you can find this and other paintings I've created for sale on my website at www.lsjart.com. You can also see some of these live at different events. Thanks for watching.